Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series of sessions in which we talk about development of blood vessels, and this is part 3 of that series. In the last part we left at the development of third arch, details of the third arch artery, and we came to know that the third arch is specifically meant for development of the carotid system. So, we are done with the third arch artery, and now in this session let us see what happens to the fourth arch artery and the sixth arch artery, which are major arteries of the body along with the third. So, proceeding with the session, what will happen to the sixth arch artery? Because sixth arch artery is slightly different from the third and the fourth. Why it is different? Because in the previous session we said that the third and the fourth arch arteries will open into the ventral part of the aortic sac, but sixth arch artery will open on the dorsal aspect. So, it is different from the other two. So, talking about the sixth arch artery on each side, it will give rise to, just have a look on the encircled area in the top right corner figure, a branch to the lung bud. So, by this time the lung bud is also has developed and it will be needing blood supply. So, the sixth arch artery will cater to the blood supply of the developing lung bud and will send a branch to the developing lung bud. So, it is concerned with lungs. So, we can already presume that this will somehow form the pulmonary arteries. So, as soon as the sixth arch artery comes in question, always remember it is pulmonary arteries. So, third arch artery, carotid system of arteries, sixth arch artery, pulmonary arteries, because we are talking about the lung. So, sixth arch artery will give an artery to the developing lung bud on the left side and the right side. Now, what happens when this bud arises in this single artery? It will get divided into two parts, a part which is lying proximal to this bud and a part lying distal to this bud, and the fate of these two parts will be different. Now, let us see what is happening on the right side and the left side. So, fate of the portion of sixth arch artery beyond the artery to the lung bud. Beyond means distal, the part which is shown by dotted blue lines, not the solid blue but the dotted white and blue dotted lines. We are talking about this portion on the left and right side. So, if you focus on the right side, this part has completely disappeared, but if you focus on the left side, this portion will form ductus arteriosus, the part which is shown by blue and white dotted lines, blue and white dotted area. So, this forms ductus arteriosus. Now, why a connection has been left here, whereas the same part on the right side has disappeared? Because on the right side we will have the arch of aorta. In the developing fetus, the lung is not functional. So, blood from the pulmonary artery will have to be bypassed to the arch of aorta. So, we need some bypassing channel till the pulmonary circulation starts at birth. So, before birth, this channel will serve to bypass the blood from the pulmonary artery to the aortic arch, and that is why it remains on the left side. Why? Because the aortic arch is present only on the left side. So, finally, we revise again the fate of portion of sixth arch artery beyond or distal to the artery of lung bud. So, right side it will disappear and left side it will form the ductus arteriosus. So, obviously, ductus arteriosus will also remain only till birth, after which it will form a ligament known as ligamentum arteriosum. So, the presence of ligamentum arteriosum in the adult is actually telling us that some embryological structure was present during life, but it has got converted into a ligament after birth because it is no more needed. So, we have talked about the part distal to the artery. Now, let us see what happens to the part proximal to the artery to lung bud. So, actually this part is lying between the pulmonary trunk and the lung bud artery. So, lung bud artery we have already seen where this pulmonary trunk is coming from, because this, as we said, this initial part, the aortic sac, has also divided. So, in this lower part we will now have two arteries, the ascending aorta and the pulmonary trunk. So, the trunk, the part of the sixth arch artery lying between the pulmonary trunk and the lung bud artery, this is actually the proximal, or you can simply say the part of the sixth arch artery proximal to the lung bud. That is easier, proximal to the lung bud. So, on the right side it will form the pulmonary artery, and on the left side also it will form the pulmonary artery. So, fate of this part, the proximal part, is same on both the sides, but the fate of the distal part is different. On the right side it disappears, left side it forms a ductus arteriosus. So, wherever there is a difference in the left and the right side development, usually they become important questions. They may be asked in your vivas, they may be asked in your MCQ questions. So, we have to remember these points where there is a difference in the left and the right side, and then you must also know why the difference. So, what is the fate of aortic sac? See, as I said, in the truncus arteriosus, a septum is forming, which is known as conotruncal septum or the spiral septum. This we have read in the development of the heart already. We will be taking up these sessions, but as of now, I assume that we already know in the truncus arteriosus, the spiral septum forms, which is also known as the conotruncal septum. Now, this septum will also extend into the proximally lying aortic sac, dividing it into a dorsal part and a ventral part. This we have already discussed in the previous session. And we also said that the blood from the ventral part passes into the third and fourth arch arteries. Why? Because they have connected to the ventral part. So, whatever blood is coming from the heart tube going into the aortic sac will now be divided into ventral and dorsal part. Blood from the ventral part of aortic sac will now enter into the third and the fourth arch arteries, whereas the blood from the dorsal part will move into the sixth arch artery. Why? Because the sixth arch artery has connected with the dorsal part. So, I hope this is clear now, and we can also have a look at the arrows which are showing clearly separate parts. Now, we move further cranially towards the right and the left horns of the aortic sac. So, till now we talked about the aortic sac, and now we are talking about the right and the left horns. So, the right horn of the aortic sac, we can see a labeling here as BA. BA is actually the brachiocephalic artery. We also call it as the brachiocephalic trunk. So, the right horn of aortic sac will form the brachiocephalic trunk, but the left horn will not form the brachiocephalic trunk. Why it will not form? Because there is no brachiocephalic trunk. In the adult also, we have seen that there is no brachiocephalic trunk on the left side. So, if you answer, never say left brachiocephalic trunk or right brachiocephalic trunk. There is only one brachiocephalic trunk, and it is understood that it lies on the right side. There is nothing like left brachiocephalic trunk. So, left horn will not form any brachiocephalic trunk, but it will get incorporated into the formation of arch of aorta. So, we all know that sometimes we give reason why questions. You have to give a reason why this is happening on the left but not happening on the right. So, if you get a give reason why question, why brachiocephalic trunk is present only on the right side, then this embryology will help you, this embryological basis will help you, and the correct answer would be the right horn of the aortic sac forms a brachiocephalic trunk, but the left horn gets incorporated into the formation of the arch of aorta. That is why there is no left brachiocephalic trunk. So, this also solves a very important give reason why question. Now, we will focus on arch of aorta, because this is a very important question, a very important blood vessel in our body which is taking care of the major blood supply. Let us talk about arch of aorta. How is it formed? Remember, arch of aorta is a very big blood vessel and does not form from any single source. It will form from number of sources, specifically 4 sources. So, let us see one by one. As we said, ventral part of the aortic sac is the first source. So, this is the ventral part of aortic sac is the first source. Then the left horn of the aortic sac. Just now we said left horn gets incorporated into the development of arch of aorta. So, the second source is left horn. Focus on the red arrows in the figure, and then you can easily understand this is the area where the left horn was lying. Moving to the third source. Now, this is the third source, the left fourth arch artery. This is the main part. The left fourth arch artery, but if we specify again, extending from where till where? So, this is from the attachment of left common carotid to the attachment of dorsal aorta. Only this much part of the fourth arch artery on the left side will form the part of the arch of aorta. So, this is the third source. So, this part is the left fourth arch artery. Now we come, this has not still ended, because we said the 7th cervical intersegmental artery will join the dorsal aorta. So, now this point becomes important. The last contribution is the dorsal aorta, but up to where? Up to attachment of 7th cervical intersegmental artery, only till that point. Beyond that point, it will not be the arch, it will continue as the thoracic aorta, descending aorta. So, these are the 4 sources of development of arch of aorta. Now, this is a very, very important question, because it is an important vessel in our body. So, we can enumerate again. The first part, ventral part of aortic sac, the second part, left horn of aortic sac, third part, left fourth arch artery, but from where to where? From the attachment of the common carotid, left common carotid, up to the attachment of dorsal aorta. And the fourth part is dorsal aorta itself, but till where? Till attachment of 7th cervical intersegmental artery. So, again, if you remember the figure, you will be easily able to decode it. Rather than mugging up the points, it is always remember to keep the figure in your mind. So, this part is the fourth contribution. Now, subclavian arteries is also an important area, because development is different on left and right side, and now you will understand the importance of 7th cervical intersegmental artery. Why we have been talking about only this artery? Because it is contributing to subclavian arteries. So, what happens on the right side? See, right side subclavian artery has 2 sources of development. What are these 2 sources? The first one is the right fourth arch artery. The right fourth arch artery has not contributed to the arch of aorta. So, it is contributing to the subclavian artery. And the second contribution is right 7th cervical intersegmental artery. So, 7th cervical intersegmental is bound to form the subclavian, but additional source on the right side is the right fourth arch artery. But on the left side, it is only the left cervical intersegmental artery. So, the moment this word comes, 7th cervical intersegmental, remember it is going to develop into subclavian with an additional source on the right side, but only this on the left side. So, some things they should come into your mind immediately when you hear these words. Third arch artery, carotid system. Fourth arch artery on the left side, aortic arch, arch of aorta. Sixth arch arteries, pulmonary arteries, and 7th cervical intersegmental artery, subclavian arteries. You can keep adding items to them, but largely you must immediately remember about these points about the arch arteries. So, finally, we move to the summary of derivatives of the arch arteries. So, in this particular table, we can see we are focusing on arteries, and then we are talking about their sources of development, like aortic arch, arch of aorta. It is, as we said, aortic sac, then the left horn of aortic sac, the left fourth arch artery. Now, on this table, one part is missing, and that part is the dorsal aorta up to the attachment of 7th cervical intersegmental artery. So, this point should trigger your mind, because this point is missing here. Now, coming to the brachiocephalic artery, we know there is only one, so right horn of the aortic sac. Right subclavian artery, the proximal part from the right fourth arch artery and the distal part from the right 7th cervical intersegmental artery, but the left one only from the left 7th cervical intersegmental artery. Common carotid, we all know, third arch artery, but it should be proximal to external carotid artery bud. Now, internal carotid artery is again third arch artery, but distal to the bud, but additional contribution from cranial part of dorsal aorta, which is distal to the attachment of third arch artery. External carotid is a separate bud, independent bud arising from the third arch. And pulmonary arteries, we know on both the sides, the part of the sixth arch artery which is proximal to the lung bud. So, distal part has different fates, but the proximal part will always form the pulmonary artery on both the sides. Now descending aorta. We haven't focused on the descending aorta till now. So descending aorta will also have two parts. The initial part will be separate, but the distal part will be fused. So the proximal part will form from the left dorsal aorta, distal to the attachment of fourth arch artery. The second contribution is distal part, which is coming from the fused dorsal aorta. So this table is actually giving us artery wise summary of sources of development. But if we focus on the second table, although the summary is continued, but with a different approach. The first arch artery, derivatives, maxillary, or in fact we can call them as remnants because the larger part has disappeared. So maxillary artery is the remnant of first arch artery. Then second arch artery, remnants are hyoid and stapedial. What happened to the remaining? Disappeared. Larger part disappeared. Third arch artery, common carotid, internal carotid, external carotid. Fourth arch artery, left side is the part of arch of aorta, right side proximal part of right subclavian artery. And sixth arch on the left pulmonary artery and ductus arteriosus, on the right only the right pulmonary artery. So we can see how questions will vary and the answers will also automatically vary. So we need to have two types of approaches. One which is focusing on the artery proper and then telling its sources of development, and the second is we are talking about the arch arteries and telling their derivatives. So please focus on what has been asked and also read these two parts separately in this manner. So this is all about the series that we started on the development of blood vessels, and then we proceeded to pharyngeal arch arteries and we talked about the fate of the various arteries of the head and neck region. So this completes this series of sessions. Thank you very much, and we will meet again with a new series in the other coming videos. Thank you very much.